Without doubt, I think it's by far the best league in the world.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League? Mission accomplished in the Premier League. The American.
Scouser.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of ASTV's Premier League show. I'm your host, Gally, as always, coming to you from a cold but starting to thaw out northeast. So we're getting some temperatures in the 50s this week, which hopefully will take some of the glacier worth of ice that has built up around this region and will start to dissipate a bit. And who knows, maybe we'll even get some of our drains or storm drains to go down and some of the water to come off the streets. How are we doing down in the Carolinas today, Paul?
Same old plugging away. It's starting to warm up a little bit here. I mean, obviously it never got to what you have, but it's creeping back up. I think today was in the 50s, which is still pretty cold for us, but out of the 30s is good. People stop operating as normal humans when it drops below 40 down here. So
yeah, I'd say that it takes it getting into the teens for it to get that way here. I knew it was really bad one day last week when it was like 35 in the car, and I decided that was a good day to get out of the car without a jacket on. And by the time I got inside somewhere, someone was like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" I'm like, well, all right, so it's 30 degrees warmer than it was for the last 3 days. And they were like, "I know, but it's still 0 out, man. What the hell's wrong with you?" So to which I usually respond the same way, a lot, an awful lot. So speaking of what is wrong, let's get into VAR review match of the week here for match week 26. And we are not going to touch on all the VAR events. There were a few of them. Want to touch on some of the high-level ones. Let's start with the low-hanging fruit, in my opinion, which was the offsides call on the first goal that Everton scores against United. And to me, this one didn't make a lot of sense. The goal ends up standing. Beto scores after a highly comical for anyone but United supporter attempt at defending, as you know, literally they play like keep up in their own area. Beto, eventually the ball falls. He bundles it in into his own net. They had almost a 3.5-minute review, and it didn't at any moment seem like it warranted it. So I guess my question to you, Paul, is feels like it was too long. It felt like too many issues. But I guess my bigger problem is it sounds like semi-automated offsides wouldn't have helped in any way because they have decided not to put a chip in the ball. So they still would have sat there trying to figure out, does Lindstrom actually get a touch on the ball? So, like, how do these referees get outside of their own way if they're not going to even utilize the technology available to make these calls easier for on-field officials?
feels like if it's been effective across all of Europe, you would apply it the same way it's been applied across all of Europe, right? Like, why would you shortcut it? Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Neither did as well. You know, I know that you're going to analyze every player and their position and make sure they're not in any line of sight or interfering with the play at all. Since there were several players that kind of in and out of an offside position, but like, yeah, to sit there and try to like crime scene analyze whether somebody touched the ball or not seems silly in retrospect for the whole thing. Of course, if you're a Manchester United fan, you don't think it's silly. You're just crossing your fingers and hoping they come back with something nice. But yeah, it seemed a little ridiculous.
And I guess my bigger thing with it was I never saw an angle. And the worst part was I don't think there was any view of any of it. Even if Lindstrom touches the ball, I think Beto's still being played onside by De Ligt. So to me, the whole thing seemed like it was very, very comical, to almost like they were trying to make sure that they didn't get something wrong in it. And in turn, they made it take even longer, which is just like we've talked about it before, it just disputes the entire process. So maybe the second biggest talking point of the weekend, and it is funny, it feels like anytime we have one of these segments, we can almost pencil in the section where we talk about an Arsenal player being sent off. Would be the denial of a goal scoring opportunity by Lewis Skelly. You know, to be fair, a young player who has shown himself very well and acquitted himself well so far this season, as many of the youngsters have. For Arsenal, I think we talked a few weeks back about the ridiculous red card that got him sent off, where Michael Oliver decided to go all Michael Oliver on an EPL match and make it all about himself. Never have we seen that before. But in this situation, when Kudus gets the ball on the touchline, on the halfway line, he gets a really, really smart touch. He turns the young defender. The defender hooks him, takes him down, and he gets a yellow card immediately. So I guess my first question, before we get into the application of VAR, when you saw it, did you believe immediately it was a red? Should be a red? Did it take a second or two until the announcer started to really kind of hammer in that is a red all day? Like, what were your thoughts? Because to me, this goes to, we saw players not get sent off this season for that, and we've seen players get sent off for it. So where was your thoughts before even applying how VAR applied the rules to this?
I mean, my thought was that it was a clear red card just because of the fact that I think it really comes down to how good Kudus' touch is. He almost plays himself in 1v1. So, like, in that situation, like, to me, it was pretty clear. What I don't love about this is all the talk about. Like, I don't love the fact that we're considering the goalkeeper's position on it. I know technically that has to come into play if you're talking about like a denial of a clear goal scoring opportunity. But I hate it because, like, I feel like you can be an absolute knucklehead like Raya is sometimes and get halfway up the pitch, and then you're getting those calls when you probably shouldn't. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same way. I will say I like that. I thought the match day presenter, or that's what they call him over there, the color commentator here, right? The analyst in the booth. I thought he did a really good job of explaining why Raya in a retreating position, kind of caught in no man's land, meant you couldn't even count the other defender as possible covered, because Kudus his touch is not like Jota's touch in that game where he kicks it basically 20 yards in front of himself and towards the corner flag. Comparatively to, what Kudus does. Kudus turns the player. The touch is within 3-4 feet of himself. He is going to get on that ball. There is no chance Saliba is getting there, and he is either going to go around Raya and have a shot. He has a chance to chip Raya because he's in no man's land. Or worst case, Raya takes him down and picks up a second red card on the play. Either way, Kudus is in with a chance to score. I think it has to be a red card. My only gripe with it is why is that? Like, I don't see any, I can't fathom any reason or understanding why that's not a red card in real time. And that, to me, I think bothers me more than anything. This is where I hate the re-refereeing and the on-field referees almost being given a pass. And in a lot of ways, like, to me, that's one that I thought they did a good job of the speed of it, but why does it need to go to the monitor? Like, to me, that's just a clear and obvious error. You missed this. It's a denial of a goal scoring opportunity, and change it to red. Like, you can change the Zabarni red card for reckless play without sending him to a pitch side review, I believe. Actually, no, he might have went to the pitch side review on that one as well. So I guess I don't understand what institute requiring a pitch side review compared to just overturning the call itself. Like, it to me, like, they'll do that on one hand, but not on the other.
Yeah, and I the application of VAR only works when it's refed as if it doesn't exist. Okay, like if a head ref or a match referee is a refereeing in the back of his mind where he's going to let play continue and let, like, the VAR intervene in situations and call him to the monitor, it doesn't work. because the bar and threshold for overturning a call is too high with the clear and obvious. So like, it's really murky waters. It's really murky waters because if you have a match referee that doesn't have the stones to make calls in real time as he sees them, you're going to get a lot of things wrong in the match because VAR isn't going to overturn those. They may not even call you for a lot of them.
So there were a few other ones I mentioned already. You had the Zabarnarni, or however the hell you pronounce his name, red card for Bournemouth, which really killed them in the 29th minute. Initially given a yellow, rightfully overturned to a red. It's a leg-breaking tackle. I don't think the guy's trying to hurt anyone, but you got to get sent off for tackles like that in 2025. You had the Soboslai Jones offside on Liverpool's second goal, on Soboslai's goal, where they were both kind of offsides, and then Soboslai doesn't try to play the ball, and I liked how they kind of adjudicated that. I didn't have any issue there. And then of course, the Aina handball for Forrest. His arms are at shoulder length. It's away from the body. I don't think he's trying to make himself bigger or block the ball, but it's a handball all day long. You jump in your arms here.
I really hate that call, though. I really hate that call, and I feel like there's a lot of handball nonsense this weekend, just in general. Like in every match that I watched, there was some nonsense about handball. Like, and I don't know. Like, I thought there was, I thought the one where, like, who was it? Was it shoot, I can't remember the defender it came off of now. I thought that was more of a handball than this one because I understand that his arm is above, his shoulder, essentially. But, like, to me, when you're running and you jump and you spin with your back towards goal, your arm does go up like this naturally. And even though it makes you bigger, I don't know. I just hate that call. I hate the call because to me, it was a natural position. To me, the proximity of the cross or the shot was close enough that, like, I just didn't love that call. But I understand why it's called. I just don't love it.
Yeah, I felt it was a handball, but I also think that the player kind of knows what he's doing there, and I think this is the other problem. I think defenders, as always, will take that inch that they can, and I think he tried to make it look good, but I think when it hits the edge of your elbow and it is fully perpendicular with the shoulder and the arm is going further out than that, like, I think he tried to make himself as big as he could without making it look too bad. Granted, if it happens to us, I'm probably screaming bloody murder. In that instance, it did feel like it. But let's maybe talk about probably the biggest call of the weekend, and that was the rescinding of the penalty in stoppage time for United versus Everton. So I found this very, very interesting after the match report came out, because truly what ended up happening was, and this comes to the whole, like, let people hear the conversations in the stadium, because ultimately, by rule, they couldn't look at the De Ligt foul because the match official told the VAR he was calling a penalty on Harry Maguire. And the issue was that Harry Maguire was deemed to not foul the player. And therefore, once the frames are looked at, they can only look at the Maguire foul. Now, if he sees a foul by De Ligt, he can decide to make it an offense, but he can't be asked to look at the De Ligt foul. So he can't ask for more camera angles. So once again, this feels like minutia.
Yeah, let's be clear. There are 3 separate fouls on this play, right? Like, it makes no sense to me. I don't understand. I mean, you can make the argument for embellishment, okay? So in my opinion, I see fouls, right? Like, now we have to take into the fact that this is Ashley Young, and I'm sure this has something to do with it, right? Like, these refs have
well, that's what they're basically. That is what they're saying. They're basically saying that the foul, there is a tug, but we've seen this year many times where if the action by the offensive player does not warrant the actual response of the defender, then the ref can question, was it embellished and created? And I think if Ashley Young just stays a little bit stronger on his feet and doesn't go down like a house of cards, he might actually get the call. At the end of the day, I can understand why Everton supporters would be irritated. I can understand why David Moyes would say, I don't understand how this happens. I don't feel for a team that's 2-0 up in the 80th minute and can't hold on against a poor side. Like, that's not, like, I'm not going to feel bad for Everton, to be honest, because they had more opportunities to score. They could have saw out the match. I also think there is, if it's Ashley Young and it's questionable and the referee has a way out of it, the crazy part is he goes to the pitch side monitor and comes back and wipes out his own penalty, which that to me was kind of baffling. I understood what their description is. I guess my question for you is will this lead to the Premier League and IFAB looking to institute and test the communication and the on-field allowing supporters, or is this just one more reason why they can't let us hear it, because we're just going to hear how inept they are at running this?
I don't believe this will ever happen, because I don't believe they are confident enough in what they're doing to think that it will be a good thing for the game from an optics standpoint, especially consider the corruption and turmoil that PGMOL has had to endure over the last 12 to 18 months, be it from coup or anything outside noise. I just don't ever believe that's going to happen. I would love for it to happen. I struggle with the system that can go to a monitor when there's been a penalty called and like come away from that with nothing. Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't fundamentally understand how it matters. Like, if there's a series of, like, to me, there's multiple fouls there, and I don't understand why it matters who the foul was initially called on, right? Like, the whole purpose of VAR was to get it right. So if the declining thing is, well, you called it on the wrong guy and you don't want to look at this, or you do look at this and you don't see enough there because the threshold isn't clear and obvious to overturn it. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to me, man. Like, the whole point was to get it right. Like, it shouldn't matter that you called it on the wrong guy.
It genuinely feels like kind of like a word salad. Like, it's just unbelievable. So we'll move on from VAR and talk about we'll talk about the ridiculous to the sublime, right? We transition from VAR to Mo Salah. What can be said? This graphic is one that was created by one of our crack statisticians who found it upon himself to look up all the history books and buy history books and just basically realize that Mo Salah has done things that other players haven't been able to do in full seasons. But this graphic would need to be updated because after getting himself another goal and an assist, he is now at 25 goals and 16 assists. All competitions through 27 matches in the Premier League. Just unbelievable. So if you look at this, the 15-15 club, so any player Premier League history with 15 goals, 15 assists. Obviously, Eden Hazard, Lattiser from Southampton, Salah, Thierry Henry, Cantona. I believe Thierry Henry did it a couple times, and this might have been his best season. I guess my question to you, Paul, is I've always shied away from the athlete comparison era to era because I think it's very difficult to talk about, what Thierry Henry had to do at the way they were allowed to defend and the way the rules were played at that time, or even what, Giggs did at the beginning of his time when he was really at his kind of highest prowess. But I'll ask you the question. Is Mo Salah the best attacking winger to ever play in the Premier League? Is he one of the top 3 or 4? And you feel like that is a fair enough assessment? Or is this one of those things where like you'd want it more to be written out in like 5 to 10 year increments and chunks to make it an even argument for you?
Ironically, I think it's the length of time that he's done it over that puts him as number 1 for me. It's longer. Like, I think the only argument that you can truly make is maybe Ronaldo, but I think his duration of doing it is substantially shorter. And like, if you look at Eden Hazard, if you look at Gareth Bale, if you look at like some of those guys that really hit some pretty incredible highs for a while, the duration that they did it is much shorter. Well, that's because they moved leagues, right? So, like, I mean, who's to say they do it over the other time? But, Gareth Bale, Eden Hazard left leagues and immediately dropped off, Ronaldo obviously was on a different trajectory there. So I think Ronaldo is only the one that I can really kind of take seriously as an argument against it. But I think it's interesting that my argument, like what I really see this as a consistency over time, considering the fact that the knock on Mo is that he was a one season wonder, right? Like that was the thing, is like he was going to be a one season wonder, and he just continues to one up that. Really, it's kind of incredible.
And I don't want to go to this level of Schadenfreude argument, but it is crazy that there's a chance that this could be his final season in the league, and the one-hit wonder might just put bookends on his Liverpool tenure with his two single best seasons from an output standpoint. And what's crazy to me is we're talking about a guy who scored 30 plus goals one year in the Premier League, and I don't even think that season even comes close to the impact he's had on the pitch this year. To me, this has been the best season for him. Maybe it's the contract situation. Maybe it's because he does believe it's coming to an end, and he just wants. It does feel like he's on a man on a mission. He just wants to win everything he wants, to earn everything. I guess I'll ask you. We're 27 games in. There's 11 matches remaining. Assuming he plays all 11 matches, where do you see those figures ending? And does he have a shot at 30-20? Does he have a shot at 35-20? Like, what do you believe the goals and assist number for the Premier League will finish at come May 22nd when they lift the trophy?
I think 30-20 is probable. I think 35-20 plus is going to be a stretch for me. I think it's doable, right? It's doable. But I could definitely see 30-20 as achievable. Especially if he, if he stays on pace, he's going to hit that. So
I think he will. I also think there is a world where Arsenal drop a couple more points. There's points dropped in a few more matches. We get a couple good results. Like we pick up a victory against Newcastle midweek this week. Maybe we win one of our other kind of tough fixtures that we see ourselves as potentially dropping points in. There's a world where literally they have their hands on the trophy by mid-April, and they start to actually focus on the Champions League and rotate a bit. And maybe Mo plays less than 90 minutes every game. I think the only thing that holds him back from hitting some of the operatic highs is if he sees his minutes start to reduce. And we all know Mo's going to start Premier League matches, but does he have to play 90 in extra time in every single match if you're marching your way towards the trophy? We say no, but this manager has proven he will rotate players if he believes it. And I think if there is a real chance for us to go deep in the Champions League and we are kind of knocking off the points to work towards the Premier League title, I think he might see his minutes reduced a bit, giving Chiesa some more minutes, maybe even giving, guys like Elliott minutes up on the right-hand side or putting Diaz over on the right. I could see his Premier League minutes decreasing as the Champions League ramps up. That being said, that is assuming that we advance through the Champions League, and obviously we got a tough task in PSG. But let's take a look at this weekend's fixtures. Obviously, the big one was Liverpool-Man City on the weekend. We're going to talk a lot about that match in our Monday night podcast. Let's start with the craziness that was Newcastle 4, Nottingham Forest 3. Forest goes up 1-0. Next thing you know, Newcastle storms back and decides to rip. I believe it was 4 scored in 11 minutes of play. Crazy, only for Forest to get a goal and then get one late and hang on. Newcastle hangs on. I'll ask you, as we always do, if we're drawing up the blame pie, more about Newcastle's really good 15-minute period in the first half, more about Newcastle still having some defensive frailties that allow people back into games. Like who leaves that match feeling better about themselves, Newcastle or Forest?
It has to be Newcastle. I mean, it's essentially a 6-point win in a fight for top 4, top 5, right? So I think it's got to be Newcastle, and I think it comes down to that explosion offensively, obviously. And you gotta you have to credit Newcastle here. This is a Forest side that for the majority of this year has been the second best defensive side in the league from a record standpoint. So, like, to go ahead and put 4 past them in quick succession, obviously credit Forest for climbing back in this, but I think that was pretty devastating to watch. And I don't know. They've got some nice pieces, all linked with Liverpool, obviously, Gordon and Isak, and I'll take both.
I take them all. Honestly, I'll take Hall if they want to give me a new left back. Like there's a whole bunch of players there. The funny part is the only player I'd be like, nah, he's not good enough. Is Jacob Murphy, who's basically proven he's been maybe their second most important player outside of Isak. As good as Gordon's been this year, Jacob Murphy might have been better, which is scary and hilarious when you think about like his time. Where was he? He was at Norwich or whatever, toiling around, like barely able to get into the side. Before he made his move. So it's an interesting side. We've talked about it before. If Liverpool's midfield is the best midfield in the league, Tonali, Guimaraes, and Joe Linton is probably the second best. It'll be really interesting, and we'll talk a little bit about how we match up there. Let's touch on the Arsenal versus West Ham match. Is this down to Arsenal not? I know Arteta had some strong words, was very critical of his side for their performance. Do you put this more down to them not strengthening in January, buying them a striker? I mean, I will say we all talk about like Crimea River, everybody has injuries. They are down their 4 top attackers, like literally their striker, their backup striker, their left wing, and their right wing, who is their talisman and best player on set pieces, penalties, and free kicks. So they are down quite a bit. But is this more about, well, then don't go buy Raheem Sterling in the summertime, buy yourself a striker, or in January, don't go try to buy Ollie Watkins just to appease your fans when you can't land the player? Like, shouldn't they have been the ones in trying to get Evan Ferguson on loan, or somebody who could have just came in with a warm body to give them a chance?
I think they had to have gone into January and get somebody. So I think it's definitely down to the fact that they didn't address a glaring need in that side. I don't think they've helped themselves. I think what's interesting, if you look at going into this season, right, we thought it was going to be City, Arsenal, Liverpool. And when you look at those 3 sides, what can you say? Well, Arsenal was probably the front runner for a lot of people. I mean, they were for me, essentially, because of how solid they were defensively, right? They had the pieces, dynamite midfield, solid defensively. You've got difference makers across the front 3 until they're injured. So that's kind of how we were looking at the City. Was the thinnest side we'd seen from them in years. So we thought maybe they're going to struggle if they got hit with some injuries, right? So, like, when you look at this was a season primed for Arsenal to go take this title. I don't understand, like, they have played this season like it's not a priority, and I don't understand it. Like, if you look at those 3 sides, I think Pep has done some things to try to get City back competitive. As this thing has devolved, I don't think any of the changes that Arteta has made has helped this team. If you look at Arne Slot and what he's done with this side, we have been blessed from an injury standpoint, relatively speaking. But if you look at those managers across the 3, that Pep's going to tweak things tactically. Arne Slot, I think we talk about his tactics, but what we don't talk about is player development with him. I think he's made every question mark on Liverpool's starting 11 a better player, like just in general. If you look at Arteta, you have players like Declan Rice steeply declining, like in terms of like what they mean to the team in their performance. So like, I don't know that Arteta's the guy. I just don't know that he's the guy that's going to get you there. You have a wide open league. It's not Tottenham this year. It's not City this year. It wasn't supposed to be Liverpool this year.
Well, this was their year to win.
Yeah,
this was their year to win the league.
100%. And when you're in second and you're within striking distance and you don't go in January and address a glaring need, to me, that's just mailing it in. And like, that's unacceptable from that standpoint. I know Arsenal supporters aren't known to be the most level-headed, but they have a reason to be really upset in this scenario.
Yeah, I do think that Arteta needs to take some of the blame for it. I do think they've made large strides under him. I have always said that I don't think he's the guy who gets them the big trophies they want, and he's the guy that gets them to the next level. I'll go back to it. I genuinely believe if the board and Edu at the time and the powers that be, if they gave Emery the same control to get rid of players like Aubameyang and get rid of Pepe and get rid of the mistakes that they bought for him, I think Emery would have found just as much, if not more, success with the Arsenal side because the players were coming. Like, granted, Odegaard was a big key, and maybe they don't sign Moreno, but they probably do because the La Liga players want to come play for a manager like Emery if you know that he knows how to coach in those big matches. And I feel like what they did was they moved on from Emery. They kind of acted like the mistake was hiring him in the first place. They made Arteta the savior, which then allowed them to say, we're going to let Arteta get rid of all these guys and give him all this extra time. And I think they did everything for him they didn't do for Emery. And I think it's why he ended up failing. Similar in some ways to like Bournemouth runs, Gary O'Neill out after not buying him players and then brings in Iriola and goes out and gets him a bunch of really good European level players and a Brazilian striker and all this stuff, and then wonders why it turns around so fast. Now, I'm not comparing the two of them, right? I think we all know that the Bournemouth manager is one of the better managers, but let's take a look at the table here, Paul, while we have a few minutes left. Liverpool does have a game in hand on all rivals all the way out through Aston Villa in 8th place. They are currently 11 points clear of the Arsenal after Arsenal's lost. Forest now, that's 3 losses in their last 5. They have Arsenal midweek, and then they play City. This is a very tricky spot for Forest. Like, Forest really needs to get a result in one of these next few fixtures because I could see a world where Forest, before they know it, they're out of the top 4 or 5, and they're thinking to themselves, "Damn, we had this like we had it on our racket, to steal a tennis phrase, and we're serving for the set, and somehow we're fighting for a Europa Conference League place." It might be beneficial to them to honestly not qualify for Champions League and take an incremental step forward. But it'll be interesting. So if I asked you right now to handicap for me, which of these sides between Forest City, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Chelsea, and I guess we can toss Villa into that mix too, but they do have the extra game played plus Champions League ties coming. Which two of those 5 do you feel most confident today in finishing in those top 5 spaces, assuming 5 spots get into Champions League?
You know what? I'm going to do the bold thing. I'm going to ignore recency bias, and I'm going to say Forest. I still think Forest because I still think they can do some nice things defensively, and I still think they have players that have just outright pace up top that can get it done. Yeah, it's a bad 2 fixtures coming up. I hope all of them are draws. Personally, as a Liverpool fan, but I gotta say Forest. I know, so I think Newcastle has higher highs. I think they also have lower lows. That makes sense. I think Newcastle doesn't have the consistency that Forest. I know they've lost 3 out of the last 5 or 4, but I mean, to me, across the board, Forest has been fairly consistent even when they've lost, and I don't think I've seen that from Newcastle throughout. City, it's City, right? I just don't there's nothing about that City side that motivates me into thinking that this is a side that is going to come into matches with a winning mentality. They just look defeated from the time I can't remember the last time I saw a City team stroll through a match and not and look disinterested. They look disinterested.
Yeah, well, I think they're at the point now where he doesn't know what to do. I mean, he rolled out Kevin De Bruyne, the ghost of Kevin De Bruyne, to start against Liverpool after not giving them starts. He had Silva and Diaz and all these players on the bench. and then you realize it's Gundogan and Kovacic. They just have no legs. They can't run. But I still, for some reason, it's all going to depend. Like, what do those guys want this season to be? Because there's still a part of me that thinks with 12 matches to go, they could just completely down tools and finish 5th or 6th and fall out of the Champions League spots. But then there's parts of me that think like they're just as apt to maybe rip off 5 wins and find a way to win. Maybe they start scoring. Mamouche starts scoring goals. They get Haaland back. And ultimately, I won't be shocked if they finish second in this thing, but they'll still end up, in my opinion, 10, 12 points off the lead. And that's because I think that's where an Arsenal capitulate. I don't have as much faith as you do in Forest. And I think it's because I started to see the cracks showing up even in some of the matches they were winning in the last month or so. They got that draw against Liverpool. They didn't play overly well. The goalkeeper had a blinder of a second half performance, or that's a point that they would have dropped. I'm worried too that they're a Chris Wood injury away, and I still just struggle with the fact, and I know they don't concede a lot of goals, but they don't score many goals either. And I just think that at times that might come up to hurt them. And I know they have 44, and you could say, well, Chris, Gally, you think Bournemouth is a great team. Forest did get 7 of those goals in one match, and they got 5 in another. So 12 of their 44 goals came in 2 matches.
Let's just go ahead and jinx Forest then. And I'll let you know that Chris Wood doesn't get hurt. So, I mean, you can stop worrying about that.
That is true. We don't have to worry about that. Brighton, Fulham, Villa, I think they all are just fighting to try to get into those late champion or late European spots. Chelsea, I just can't figure out left, right, or center. They get a lead. They can't hold on to it. Just looks like a side. This crazy part with Chelsea is we went from a world where everyone was like, wow, they finally found a manager who figured out how to manage the squad, to just like you would expect on February 20th. He's like the odds-on next favorite to get relieved from his position. And I do think there's I will not be shocked at all if Maresca is not back next season. And he is literally looking for a job. But let's talk here about the bottom half of the table. Big win for West Ham. Draw for United. Unfortunately, kept them level with West Ham. I was really hoping we would start today's show with Man United in 16th position, looking over their shoulder at Wolves on the up. After this weekend, Paul, with Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton, all losing, all conceding 4 goals. To me, we've been saying this is over. I almost feel like Wolves might be safe on 22 points, because I genuinely am not sure Ipswich, Leicester, or Southampton will get to 23 points.
Yeah, I think Wolves are safe, just in the fact that they're going to pick up some points here and there, even if they're draws, high-scoring draws or whatever. I don't see any of those 3 teams. I don't see a fixture that those 3 sides of the bottom half they're going to win. Like that, I can like.
Yeah, I feel like Ipswich, Leicester, and Southampton are or Wolves at this point it used to be right. In the Premier League, it was 40 points was the magic number, right? If you got to 40, you secured safety. I feel like with how poor the league is now, it's basically 30 points.
Yeah.
And West Ham's already there. West Ham's actual betting statistics after beating Arsenal were 0.00 that they'd be relegated on 30 points in February. So I ask you this, and then we'll jump off this screen. Is this a down league, or is this the most competitive Premier League we've ever seen? And that's why.
This is a down league this year. I genuinely think this is a down league. And again, man, I don't know. Like, I think this is, like, we talked about this weird influx of TV cash and revenue and what it's done for this league. And I don't know that it's good that it's so top heavy in the bottom 3 that come up from the championship just drop straight back down. And like, you have a number of these teams that are just very happy to do that yo-yo from a financial standpoint, take that money and drop back down. I don't know that that's good for the league. I don't know that it's good for English football. It's going to be interesting to see how this continues to trend. But like, yeah, I don't think it's a very good league this year. And in the like, the thing is like usually when you have a league that maybe not as strong from a top standpoint, from the top, you get the benefit of more parity, right? I don't even feel like we've gotten that because the bottom is so bad. So yeah, a weekend top and a really bad bottom.
Yeah, see, I don't know. I might disagree a little. I think it is a competitive league. I don't know if it's a great league by any means. I don't think it's the best Premier League. Where I think it's competitive is in past years, I don't think teams between 9 and 14 expected to go on the road and get victories against even top half sides, let alone top 5 sides. And I think you're seeing teams like Palace take it at teams. I mean, they went to Fulham and absolutely plastered them. Like, I think there are those sides like Brighton, Brentford, Fulham, even Spurs. I mean, we all laugh at Spurs getting players back week after week, more and more healthy players, and now they're starting to put together results. Now, do I think Spurs are going to go on a run and get top 7 or top 8? No, but I actually think Spurs will probably finish top half by the end of the season, where I don't think United will. I do think there is something there. Like that West Ham side, they can compete. They just need everything to go their way, yet they're sitting 15th or 16th in the side. And then you have a United side that, has a draw against Liverpool and a victory at City, yet can't get out of their own way in Everton. But then you look at an Everton side who stopped playing Sean Dice ball and started to try to play a little football under Moyes and have strung some results together. So I feel like this league is competitive because of the money spent. I don't think it's a good league because I think the bottom is so poor. But I don't think we should expect anything different. I think every year there's maybe one side that has a chance of staying up in a relegation promotion rel situation. And like next year, I think Leeds, if they don't get gutted, because they kept enough of their core Premier League side and they had the wherewithal for the higher contracts, I think Leeds might be able to stay up. But then you look at a guy like that Reuter at Brighton, and like that was Leeds' record signing the year they got sent down. Like they sold Somerville, and the guy can barely get on the pitch for West Ham, but he's a good Premier League player. I just don't know that any championship side is going to be able to come out anytime soon and play the type of football that keeps them in the league for years to come. I just don't think we're going to see a Bournemouth that comes up and establishes themselves for 5-6 seasons as a Premier League side. I think something's going to have to change in the way that they allocate the money or the balloon payments, because I think these owners are just using it as an ability to profit.
Do you think the Saudi League has had any impact on the quality of play in the EPL?
I mean, I think it had to, because I think it's probably lessened some of the players, right? The players leaving some of these smaller clubs. I also think that influx of older players leaving and going and taking bags of cash, because where did those players used to take their last bag of cash? From some championship side that came up. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not good enough to play at Tottenham anymore, so I'm going to go down and play for Leicester City and try to use my experience in this league and keep them up. And now I think a player like Harry Winks is like, wait, how much are they offering me to go play in Saudi?
And
like,
there's an infinity pool.
Yeah, well, it's a whole nother thing. Yeah, it's an infinity pool. All Harry Winks is really looking for is to find out if the streaker sends that girl out onto the pitch during major matches, because I still don't think that guy's neck has recovered from the Champions League final yet. Let's quickly take a look at the midweek fixtures, and they come fast. For any of you fantasy players out there, deadline's tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern. So Tuesday, we have Brighton, Bournemouth, Villa versus Palace, Chelsea, Southampton, and Wolves, Fulham, followed Wednesday by Brentford, Everton, Spurs, City, probably the match of the weekend, Forest, Arsenal, second versus third, At Forest, which is not the type of landing spot that Arsenal is looking for coming off a tough loss, a trip to the City Ground, all culminating with, for whatever reason, 15 minutes after all the other matches kick off, Liverpool hosting Newcastle. So we know about the fixture history of Liverpool Newcastle, the goals, the 3-3 draw earlier this year. We'll table that one for a second here. Let's start with tomorrow. If I asked you which of those 4 matches, if you could only watch one, Paul, is it Brighton and Bournemouth, Jekyll and Hyde? Is it seeing how Bournemouth responds? What are you thinking when it comes to Tuesday's slate of matches?
Yeah, I think the real intrigue is on those teams that are 2 through 7 right now. So I'll take Brighton Bournemouth just to see if Bournemouth can continue to sort of play the kind of attacking brand of football that they've been playing. Hopefully no one will get a red card within the first 40 minutes of that game and ruin somebody's betting odds. I'm not speaking personally, maybe I am, but I would like to see that game just because I think there's a lot of good attacking talent on both sides of that team.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Chelsea can actually come out and put a thumping. I think they need a performance. Maybe no player in the Premier League needs a big day more than Cole Palmer at this point. He's really had struggled with being Chelsea's main man this season, especially the second half of the season. I don't want to hear all this, oh, he was a one-hit wonder, he's not that good. You either have talent or you don't. We've seen the talent. He's not surrounded by great players, and he's playing under his third manager in his time at Chelsea. So, I think you have to be able to be realistic with that as well. Tottenham, Man City. Crazy stat. 5 times Man City has traveled to Tottenham. 5 times they've left with an L since the building of the new stadium in all competitions. Do you expect that to continue? Do you expect Spurs' resurgence to continue? Or is this a match where maybe they get Haaland back and him and Mamouche get together and they get at that back line of Spurs and they have a get-right match where they kind of celebrate and stick their chest out like the front runners they are?
I mean, that's a great statistic. I think this is probably the most interesting match of the entire weekend for me, just because I think City do have the ability to put it all together here versus Tottenham side that obviously doesn't have any natural defenders playing. But I also think that this is a weekend City side, especially defensively. Tottenham has looked a lot better in the last 3-4 weeks offensively. So I think it's very possible that we see that happen. However, it's just one of those things where, are there really signs of life here with Tottenham, or are we just seeing Tottenham going up against the Ipswiches, right? I think that's what we're really going to find out. So I'll be interested to see what team shows up to play. That being said, this match, we could literally get like a 4-3 thriller, or I can also see it just being a 0-0 total dud.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to me too. I do think, you're starting to see Son play a little better. Kulusevski's been great all season long. I do think Tell offers them a different type of player. And then you're getting Brennan Johnson back. You're slowly seeing some of the defenders come back. There's talk that Romero might be fit for this one, which was huge for them to get the center back. Let's be real. Jed Spence is playing so well. He's keeping Pedro Porro out of the side right now, which is kind of crazy. We all saw Jed Spence at Middlesbrough, and we're like, wow, looks like a player there. Struggled at Tottenham, but really seems like he's kicking on right now and figuring it out, especially going forward. So it'll be interesting for me. The other thing I don't think that should be overlooked is maybe the most underrated player on the Spurs side is the Italian goalkeeper, Vicario. He's done a really good job, and he makes them much, much better. A couple of the saves he made last weekend were absolutely otherworldly. So it'll be interesting. Real quick, because I know we'll talk about it, but we have to touch on it at the top of the table. Do you expect Liverpool to find a way to get 3 points on Wednesday afternoon? And if they don't, do you have any concerns with it being a Newcastle side that we always seem to have these crazy type of matches against?
No concerns. I do expect a way to find 3. I think this side's good enough to do that versus them. I do think Newcastle does pose a lot of problems. Offensively, I don't think they're as strong in the past as they've been defensively. And what I like about this Liverpool side is we showed something last week that I don't think we've been able to say for a really long time, is that this side has figured out how to dominate games when they don't have possession. And so, like, that may be the case in this match.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it's a good shout. The other thing is if you told me that, like, they were fully fit, I might worry a little more. I think, like, I can't believe I say this out loud, but I just think that even with a team of Isak and Gordon and all these great players, I think Joe Linton makes the whole thing go for them. And him being out changes everything in their midfield because he's just such a powerful runner. And similar to Soboslai, he does so much work off the ball that he makes it easier for the attackers and the players around him. And every time we play him, he just seems like a menace because he's just a huge jamoke in the box, and you just got to deal with him all over the place. And him being out, I just think is a massive, massive blow. And if you got to, and I mean, I know Tonali wasn't even fit to start. That might have been with one eye on this match midweek. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I too think they'll get all 3 points. I am excited for the performance. So for everyone here at American Scouser TV, thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, do all the good things. We will catch you on the next one. Thank you and have a good week.